So on today's episode, we had Bryon McCartney, who's an architect business coach. He helps architects grow their firms, attract better clients, and improve visibility without becoming marketers. What did you think about today's episode?
Well, I learned a lot about how to market my business as an engineer. Well, I'm not an architect, but I think a lot of the same things apply. But it got me thinking about what value do you bring to your customer? What value do you bring to your client? I mean, what for example, what do you look for in an architect?
I've never looked for an architect.
Well, that's fair. But he was talking about, okay, do you look for example, do you hire based on price or other aspects? Like, in other words, can you really prove and show your value, or are you just basing it off of price? That was one of the ideas. So how to really show, what is it that you do for the customer? What is it how are you best helping them in the commercial realm or residential realm? What is it that you really do? Otherwise, if you can't show that value, then they are going to just get the cheapest
Show the reviews.
person.
Pretty much.
Yeah. So those are a few things we talked about. A lot of fun things. So it was a good episode.
That sounds like awesome.
So you should check it out.
Sure.
This is the Enhanced Podcast. I'm Andy. This is our producer, Madeline. And let's jump to the intro.
Welcome to Enhance, an AEC podcast where we learn the why behind AEC professionals so that you can learn your why.
Hey, Bryon, welcome to the Enhanced Podcast.
Thanks a lot. I'm glad to be here.
And good to meet you today.
Yeah, same here.
So I like to start out with just a fun opener. And I noticed you are you're certified in StoryBrand.
Yeah.
So, the author of StoryBrand, Donald Miller, he really likes stories, of course, and different movies and books. So what story resonates with you the most? I mean, it might be a book or movie or a personal story.
Yeah, I think one of the, I was asked this question recently, and I had to think about it a little bit. There were a couple of books that I read around the time that I graduated from college, and one of them was called The Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance by Robert Pirsig. And I found that book to be really profound and moving. It was a story of a father and son taking a trip together and on their motorcycles. And it was just written in a very honest and authentic way. It was kind of like, I don't know how to describe it. It was like, I hadn't read a story like that in a long time, and it just really, the story kind of moved me in a way, and it's always kind of resonate back to that book whenever somebody asks me a question about what's your favorite story, or that always comes to mind.
Yeah, awesome. Well, that's the second time I've heard that recommendation. I can't remember where I heard it the first time, but it sounds like I need to check that one out. Maybe.
Yeah, I just picked it up. I saw that they had there's a performance version of it on Audible that I'm looking forward to read over the summer, or listen to over the summer.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks for sharing that. I mean, I think definitely, story can help us in our marketing, is what I think the thesis of Donald Miller is. And that's something you do a lot of. And I think stories just resonates with everybody in general. Why do you think that is?
Well, inherently, I think, and Don talks a lot about this, the story that we're talking about when we're using StoryBrand is really the customer's story. It's about them. And I think, like it or not, that's most people really want to know what's in it for them and what are they getting out of it, right? That's how you get people's attention. It's not about propping yourself up and talking about all your accolades. It's about figuring out how you're solving their problem. Ultimately, a lot of people, we're animals. We have this need to thrive or survive, as Don puts it. And you know, when we're faced with a challenge, a problem, you know, whether it's just, you know, improving our status because we want a new home or we want to buy a certain product, ultimately we're looking for ways to solve that problem. It's coded in our genes, you know. And so I think what's brilliant about StoryBrand, and in particular, is that it's really about just boiling it down to a very simple explanation of how you solve your ideal client's problem, and then putting them in the center of that, so that they feel reassured, and assured that you're actually going to help them. And so, you know, I think that at the heart of it, that's what Story really gives us the power to do.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think when you hit the nail on the head, I mean, what's in it for me? I mean, we all are busy.
Yeah. There's a lot of noise.
And so if in your primary market that you work with, your primary customer is architects. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So you're helping architects craft their story for their customer.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure I mean, it could vary from architect to architect who that customer is. But why did you why do you focus solely on architects over the past, your career, basically?
Yeah, it's a good question. I get it a lot. My background is primarily in consumer products. So I started my career working in personal care, actually, hair care, deodorant. I worked for a company that was eventually bought out by Unilever. And when I went to Unilever, I really was focusing on a broad swath of B2C brands like Calvin Klein, Lipton Foods. Went from there, went to Switzerland. I worked for a company there where our main client was General Motors and some of the Swiss banks, and, you know, big companies. I decided to eventually leave. And while I was still in Switzerland, I started my own firm, which eventually became an agency. And we started working with, my wife had a lot of background. She became my business partner. My wife had a lot of background in industrial products, industrial manufacturing, building materials was among them. And we worked for some large global manufacturers, and I was frequently visiting job sites where, you know, they're in various stages of completion and construction and so forth. And when we came back to the U.S., we were trying to figure out what we wanted to do, and we were circling around construction and building materials, and then we met an architect. And it was kind of like all the puzzle pieces just kind of fell into place. And what we realized, you know, and it's kind of like, I'll admit, it's a little bit of a post-rationalization. We didn't plan it this way, but when we were in Europe, and even today, I mean, most of our travels, when we go someplace, we go to a new city, I'm the one that's sitting there, like, I'll go and I'll be like, oh, well, what are the cool buildings designed in the city, you know? And we were doing this before we started working with architects, and we realized that we call ourselves archi-geeks. Like, we really love architecture, and we enjoy experiences that involved our architecture. And it's something we actually sought out well before we sought out to work with architects. But it was just kind of like all these puzzle pieces just started coming together, and things started making a lot more sense. And so from there, we worked with this one firm. We had a great relationship with them. We got them a lot of success, and it was a great collaboration with them. And we decided we wanted to do more of that. And we happened to be working with a business coach at the time, and he was kind of pushing us to pick a niche anyway. And so it was you know, it was kind of like all these things just came together all at once, and that's what got us started.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so you're an archi-geek. Mm-hmm. Okay. And
say it loud, say it proud. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm an engineer, so I'm a bit of a geek myself. But
there you go.
And I did have one semester of architecture school, believe it or not. So,
yeah. So I studied graphic design, and part of my curriculum didn't include architecture, but we had like this, you know, it was like it was one of those classes where it was called 3D, and this was well before CAD, and so it was all about building like three-dimensional models out of popsicle sticks and stuff like that.
Sure.
And so I really loved that, and I was more inclined to I like the 2D drawing and sketching and things like that I did in art school, but I really liked the stuff that was more more spatial and more physical, molding clay and things like that. So I always kind of gravitated towards that stuff.
Yeah. Okay. And do you have any? So it sounds like you've traveled a lot with your different businesses or different interactions. And what are some of the more interesting architecture buildings and things that you've seen?
Some of them that stand out to me, I mean, of course, in London, there's the Tate Modern. It's a old power facility that they turned into a modern art museum. And when you walk into it, it's got this huge empty hall. I mean, sometimes they have different exhibitions in there and so forth. The one time we went there, you walk in and it's just this huge turbine hall that's completely gutted. There's no turbines or anything left there. And then up on this platform, this was just really freaky. They had this giant sculpture. I mean, it must have been 30 feet high and probably, I don't know, I would say like 60, 80 feet around. And it was like something out of Alien, it was just kind of like this huge, gigantic spider. So I really like, I think spaces that are adaptive, like they take an old space and turn it into something new. When we lived in Switzerland, the apartment that we lived in for many years was actually an old foundry for a industrial manufacturing company. One of the places that I think is my favorite place that I would definitely like to go back to is way up in the mountains of Switzerland in a town called Vals. Vals is famous for two things. One, it's where they produce the mineral water. So there's thermal baths there as well. And there's the Vals Terme. The Vals Terme is it's a spa and there's a wonderful, I think it's a Michelin star restaurant there. But that thermal bath, that facility was designed by an architect named Peter Zumthor. He's a famous Swiss architect, and I would say that it was probably like one of the best experiences I've ever had. Because we got to stay there. It was an overnight and all that, but then we got to experience the baths and have dinner there. It was just an amazing experience.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. I mean, some of that, I've never been to Europe or Switzerland or really outside of the Americas,
Yeah.
So that's really interesting because, I mean, really some of these places, their history goes way back beyond what
the
U.S. So to see something like that where it has this old and new, and old there is really old. Whereas
it can be. Yeah.
Yeah, because we have some of that here, right? Like you have a 1800s or maybe even a 1500s building, but they have like 500s and stuff.
Yeah. That was it was really cool to be able to travel. I've been to over 170 different cities across the globe now. I would say probably when it comes to kind of that kind of perspective, I think China was really amazing. China and Japan both were really amazing. Especially like in China, they have the Forbidden City, which is the old imperial palace, and it's completely preserved, and you can go through and experience it. They got the Chinese Wall, of course, but then you go to China is like this kind of like you can find everything there because there's really ancient. But then you go to like the airports are just like, oh my God, they blow you away. You get off the plane, you walk out, and they're just the scale of everything is so much bigger than a lot of what we have here.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that sounds pretty exciting, Bryon. I want to go back to Peter's Zoom tour for a minute.
Zoom tour, yeah.
Zoom tour, because it occurred to me, like, okay, he seems to have found, you mentioned niche, he seems to have found probably a niche. Do you think he has a hard time finding work, by the way?
No, he doesn't. He's a world-class architect who wouldn't have any problem finding work. I don't think he probably turns down more work than he actually gets. I think the architects who really struggle, the architects that we work with typically are the smaller firms. They're local firms here in the U.S. primarily. We have some Costa Rica and Canada. We've worked with firms in the U.K. and South Africa as well. But they're typically firms that the owner either took over the firm or started their firm maybe around 2008 when the economy, kind of collapsed. And they've been able to do okay. They get some referrals, they get some repeats, but they don't have any predictability in their business, and they go through this up and down cycle. We call it, the cash flow roller coaster, basically. And the problem with a lot of architects is that they're really good at design, they're really good at solving problems, but they don't know a lot about business. They don't know a lot about marketing or sales. And unfortunately, in the industry, historically, a lot of the people who mentor an architect, the firms they worked with previously, they seem to hold their cards very close to the vest, right? They don't give away a lot of their secrets, or a lot of them aren't transparent about what's going on in the business and so forth. And so, these architects, they're very heads down. They're trying to do the stuff they love to do, which is the design. And business is kind of like this, I don't know, I call it a necessary evil. It's not the thing that they really want to do or focus on. It's something they have to do. And so they don't know how to deal with that sometimes. They don't know the best practices. And that's where we tend to come in, is to help them get a handle on that and get some systems in place, marketing, lead generation, and also help them figure out how to sell better. One of the things I see, one of the big problems I see with a lot of architects, is they give away a lot of free work and expertise just to win, because they think that's what's going to win over the client. And a lot of times it really backfires on them.
Yeah, what do you mean by that? Like free work?
Well, a client will call them up, and in order to get the project, they're trying to already solve the problem before they've gotten a commitment to work. And we could do this, and we could. I had a client, to be honest, he's done a complete 180 on how he approaches things. But when he came to us, he was spending a lot of time actually going to job sites and going to people's houses, and he would start sketching on the spot in the first meeting, and we could do this, and we could, and I'm like, that is not how you want to position yourself, right? You're basically becoming an order taker. You're not positioning yourself as an expert. And I said, we have to put some guardrails up, and so we did. And there were some other things we did for him around how he was handling inbound inquiries and things like. The problem was he was getting tons of inquiries. The year before we met him, he had 500 inquiries come in, but 95% of them were not the clients he wanted to work with. So he was spending all this time saying no, or exploring projects with people who weren't really going to hire him. And so we basically set his website up as a qualification tool, and build a funnel. Told him to turn off the phone. Things go to voicemail, and the first message they hear is, if you have a project, please go to our website. And we did that, and within the first 6 months, instead of having all these inquiries that were basically him chasing his tail, He had solid business opportunities, and he went from a 5% conversion to a 60% conversion. So, yeah.
Wow, that's a good story.
And he recovered over 2 weeks of billable hours at the same time.
Yeah.
That we could calculate pretty readily. So, yeah, it was a huge turnaround for him.
That sounds like a good success story right there.
Yeah.
So he's almost on his way to being the next Peter Zoom tour right there, right?
I don't know if he'd want that, but his main thing is that he's got a really great story. If we're to talk about the story, he grew up in a broken home. His parents got divorced when he was young, and when he was little.
Are you talking about Peter or this?
No, I'm talking about this client.
Your client, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, his name's Mike. And so Mike, when he was young, it's funny, he was spending time going between mom and dad, and he would spend time when he's 5 or 6 years old, he was creating floor plans.
Wow.
Because this was how he was envisioning, this dream home that he wanted to create.
Wow.
And so now what he does, and this is where we really tapped into that story, is we said, we came up with this, kind of like a tagline, of designing, having trouble remembering it off the top of my head, but it was something to the effect of, transforming your house into a home where your family wants to be together, or something that brings family together, basically.
Yeah.
And that's really his mission. That's really what he focuses on. So,
yeah, and that's awesome, because really one of the things we're trying to do in this show is reveal those type of stories. We definitely want to help architects with what your vision is, and get some insight into how we can do that, because they can't do what they're trying to do, right? Which is what you just described. Maybe their vision is a little different than Mike's, but that's enhancing the world around you, which is the name of the podcast. That's really trying to make it better for people. But if you're trapped, if you're I forgot the thing you described it as, but if you feel trapped, right, with all this busy work and 95% that are not going to jobs, you can't do what your vision is, right? So how do you get out of that, I think situation?
I think that's I think a lot of architects, they get into they start a business or get into a business in a lot of different ways. But I think a lot of them, they think it's just going to be, let me go back. Let me step back a second.
Sure.
If we look at the history of architecture, and the AIA, I think, really did a disservice to architects a long time ago. Back in the 1800s, when they first founded the AIA, one of the bylaws, one of the rules of the AIA was that you could not promote yourself. Now, back then, advertising was seen as a low-class, unprofessional way to sell a service, right? So there was precedent on that, but those rules stayed in effect until the 80s, okay? Yeah, wow. It took two lawsuits by the DOJ to stop this practice of the AIA. Basically, if you were promoting or advertising your services, the AIA could take away your credentials, and so they finally were forced to stop doing this. But if you think about it, the people who are now the firm owners, or maybe the people who are kind of like my age, 50 to 60-ish, who are firm owners, they studied under those, they worked and studied under those architects who came from this mindset of you don't promote yourself. Your reputation is what makes you a great architect and what brings people. But we live in a much different world than we did back then. Even in the 80s, we didn't have the internet. The internet came around mid-90s. It really flourished in the 2000s. And it's a completely different landscape now to how people search out and seek services. And the architecture industry has typically been behind the curve on marketing and promotion by about 15 to 20 years in our estimation. And so, when I'm talking to architects who tell me, we're struggling to get, clients, what I'm typically finding is that they're just not doing some of these things that we know work. Having a good web presence, talking about your expertise and your experience through blog articles and social media and email. They're just not doing these basic things. And they're kind of in this, we call it, the waiting mode. They're waiting for something to happen instead of actually being proactive and having a plan and a strategy for how they're going to develop business. Now, I'm not saying that all of your business needs to come from online. Obviously, if you can get referrals from clients, you should be trying to double down on that. But if you have another channel that is bringing you 20 to 40% of your leads, and those leads are already pretty convinced that they want to work with you because they've been on your website, they read your article, they got some emails from you that help reinforce that they can do what they want to do. They got value from you. Those people are coming to you already sold, already ready to work with you, at least 80 to 90%. You're spending a lot less time convincing and educating them. Those are pretty easy to turn leads. If you can get a good handful of those in your business, you're going to be able to scale and grow and be more profitable. And that's really how we're trying to help our clients as best we can, is to help them supplement those other things that they're already doing.
Yeah, but it sounds like some architects really aren't doing much at all, especially.
No, they're not. They're literally waiting for the phone to ring. We call it hope marketing, right?
Yeah. Okay.
It's just like, I'm staring at the phone, waiting for something to happen, to be fair, they're probably out there networking and trying to meet people and, calling their contractors and their engineers and, hey, what's going on? What do you hear? But they don't have a real strategy. And that's where we come in. We have a program. We help them implement that program. And then, it's not an overnight thing. We're not running Google ads. But if you're trying to get a 1 million plus, home that custom home design, or you're trying to do local commercial work, people aren't going to hire you off a Google ad anyway, right? So we want to make sure that we're in the places that those people are searching, which is usually starting on Google.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So get your website fixed, quote unquote, which, what are some things that you're seeing architects do wrong or right on their website? It sounds like that's step one, really, get the website, right? Yeah,
the website's a really important piece of real estate, right? It's really the only real estate that you own on the web. A social media platform, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, they can always, at any moment, they can change their algorithm, and your stuff doesn't get seen unless you're paying them money to, promote it. Platforms like House and all these others are the same. So your website's really the real estate that you want to own, and so I don't know if you know this, but we have tested and analyzed over 10,000 architecture firm websites in the last 10 years. And so what we consistently see is that most firm websites don't have enough content to really rank well in search engines. It's a lot of pretty pictures. Most of the content they do have, it's all about them. Oh, here's our awards. Here's our press presentations. Here's our portfolio. Here's our testimonials. And it's really presented in more of a brochure format than in a what I would call like a client-focused format where the client is actually seeing how this architect is going to help them get what they want. And that's where StoryBrand comes in, because we don't want to build a website that's just a bunch of pretty pictures. We want to build a website that tells your ideal client, hey, you're in the right place. We are the firm that helps you get what you want. You want a custom home, you want a great office for your team, whatever that is, we're whatever that architect is really good at doing, that's the first thing that we're going to highlight on that website, and we're going to make sure that we're telling the story from the their client's perspective of how that architect is going to help them get what they want, how they're going to help solve that problem. So that's really where we're seeing the disconnect. When I say like 15, 20 years behind, those websites that we see that are those brochure portfolio format websites, they're pretty to look at. They're not really engaging the client. They're just talking about the architect and what they, all the great things that they've done. And nobody really cares about your story. They care about their own, right?
Yeah, I mean, they would say, well, doesn't the customer want to see my portfolio and
sure they do. Yeah.
See that I'm a reputable architect, et cetera?
Sure, but there's a difference between just putting your work on a web page and actually showing, telling a story about how that work helped a client, how it delivered on a dream or a vision, right? I just looked at a website today, and I went to the homepage, and there was absolutely no text. It was just an image. And I was like, imagine you're the client and you're looking for an architect, and you've just looked at, 5 different architecture firm websites that were just pretty pictures. Are you going to be able to remember, oh, there was that one picture on that one site that I really liked? Once you've gone through, let's say it's 25 to 50 images per website, and you're just clicking through these images, you're not really retaining anything, because you get what we call portfolio blindness. All the images look great. They're all professionally photographed. They look very similar. There's no differentiation. And so what is the differentiation in your mind? Well, I'm going to contact a few of these firms, and I'm going to ask them how much it's going to cost to do what we want to do. And so the only differentiation becomes price. Now, if you're having a website that is talking to the client and saying, hey, here's our process, and here's our team, and here's how we've solved the same problem you want to solve for a dozen other clients, that is giving the client an assurance that the money they're going to spend is going to have real value, because it's evident from the site. Pretty pictures, yeah, great. How much did that pretty picture cost? How much did that, there's no context. And when we don't have that context or that understanding of how those images translate to value for us, the only differentiation is who's the cheapest.
Yeah, that sounds like a dead-end path right there. So how do we...
It's just a race to the bottom. And, so that's where we really try to educate architects, is that, and we hear it all the time. Architects will complain to us all the time. Oh, our clients don't understand the value of what we do. And I always push back and I say, well, did you show them? Did you tell them what the value is? Do they, is that evident in how you're presenting yourself? And most of the time, the answer is no.
So that answer, whatever that is, they need to start. The architect needs to start sharing that on their website, like right there on the homepage, or
Absolutely. I mean, that's the best place to do it because. So here's the thing about sharing that kind of content. Written content on your website is what Google uses to understand what you do. And a lot of that content gets factored into its decision on whether or not to place you at the top of the list when people are searching for information. Now, one of the other complaints I hear from architects all the time is, well, our clients tend to go to the contractor first. Well, yeah, that's because they don't know that they need an architect. And so what we try to do with our clients, there's three pillars that we work in. One is called recognition. That's your website. That's how your website is set up, what the content is, the story you're telling, etc. Number two is reputation. Reputation is how you're communicating your expertise and your experience. In our experience, that is best done through blog articles on your website. And now, before I go in further about that, let's just explain the third pillar is reach. Reach translates also into relationships. What we're trying to do there is use social media, email, lead generation tools to build relationships. So start the relationship before the client calls you, okay? Now, if we go back to reputation and blog articles, your clients, if you're an architect, your clients are searching for solutions before they know that they need a contractor or they need an architect. They're trying to figure out, like, hey, our house is, I don't know, the floor plan doesn't work for us, or we don't have enough space. My client Mike, in his case, most of his clients are living in homes that are, they can't expand the property. They have to either go up or go down, and or slightly move out a little bit. So it's usually like adding a floor, or maybe adding an apartment above the garage, things like that.
Yeah, we like those kind of jobs. And they need structurals on those jobs.
Exactly, right? They're bigger jobs. They're major renovations. And so that's what he typically specializes in. And so him being able to communicate his ability to be able to do that, and how that helps family, because a lot of these families, they don't want to move. Their kids are in the schools they want them to be in, trying to find another property in a dense market like theirs. They either got to spend a ton more money, or they got to move out of the neighborhood that they love, where their kids have grown up. They know all the neighbors. They're hanging out with the neighbor kids, everything like that. They want to preserve that. They don't want to move. They want to stay where they are. And so he has figured out that he has a solution for that. And that's, he's telling that story. And that's what's, those people that are looking for those options they're searching for those solutions online well before they know they need an architect or a contractor, right? They're trying to figure that out. So we have created content on his blog that answers some of those questions, and brings those people to his website. Yeah,
it reminds me of the book They Ask You Answer.
Yeah, exactly. Marcus Sheridan. Yeah.
So is that similar to that?
I have read Marcus's book, and we employ a lot of that in our process. Yeah. We've kind of adapted it for architects. A few years ago, we created a set of playing cards, a deck of cards that is actually our guide to blogging for architects.
Oh, that's cool.
It's got all the headlines and things like that, we've kind of turned it into a system now, where we if we're working with a firm and we're working on their reputation aspect and wants to get their website figured out, working on the reputation aspect, we have that system we understand that system very well, and we usually know what questions to start with in helping them create that kind of content.
And so blogging,
Mm-hmm.
do you feel like that's, I mean, that book, for example, is probably a decade old, but
Oh yeah.
do you feel like the blogging is still relevant in 2026? Or is it
Yeah,
losing?
I absolutely do. I know it is.
Okay.
It's the number one reason how people come to us.
Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
and it's the number one reason most of our clients are getting consistency in their pipeline. It's because they have that content. Most architects aren't doing any of that. So, and I apologize. You might overhear my dog in the background. It sounds like he's barking in the other room. But apologize for that.
Oh, you're fine. So,
But most architects, I would say probably 90% of architects are not blogging. Or if they are blogging, they're just blogging about themselves. Oh, here's our new award. Here's our new project. Here's our new hire. Here's the thing that we're doing in the community that makes us look great. And that's great stuff. I'm not saying don't publish that, but that's stuff that is good for social media. And because you can tag other people and say, oh yeah, we worked with this group, and you can get more space for that on social media. With blogs, those articles, Google is scanning them, AI is scanning them, and if they're well written, if they're done in the right way, that's going to move you up in the visibility, and that's going to bring more traffic to your website. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes a little while for it to track. But it works, and what we find is that the people who start connecting with those architects through that content are much more dialed in on working with that architect rather than shopping around, because they know that architect has a solution for them already.
yeah. Okay. So what would be like you said don't do the awards, don't do that type of thing on a blog.
Yeah.
Maybe a small percentage, but what are some things we should focus on?
So there's one category we call insider insights. So it's the kind of information that architects know that most people don't know, that are the things that can kind of get in the way of the project, right? So there's the insider insights. Then there's the pain points. So the pain points are the things that the client is kind of going through, that they're struggling with, that they want to solve, right? Those my house is too small. I can't expand my land. I need to go up or down. Those kind of questions, right? Like, how do I, I want to transfer my home now that my kids are out of the nest. I want to redo my home so it's more fitting my lifestyle as I get into retirement in my older age, right? These are the kind of questions that I think routinely come up, especially in the residential space. In the commercial space, it might be, how do I design a new corporate environment that is going to help my team be more productive? It's questions like that. So. Your clients are searching for these kind of answers. They're trying to figure out, like, okay, where do I start with this problem? And if you can be the place that they start, if your article comes up in search, if AI says, XYZ Architects wrote this article about this problem, go check it out. If you're getting recommended in that way, it's already feeding authority to you as an expert, as an experienced provider, as somebody who can solve this problem.
Yeah.
And that's what you want. You want that, it's just like a referral. except it's the internet referring you now, right?
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
And there's like AI with these blogs and things. Is that impacting it in terms of the way that is that impacting the search function?
Yeah, it is. I mean, a lot of people are using AI to find information now. And obviously you want AI to recommend you just like you would want Google to recommend you. But the way to do that, Google just published a paper the other day, and it kind of reinforced what I already knew. Good content is good content. And AI likes good content just like Google and SEO likes good content. So if you're providing good content that people find valuable and they're spending time reading your articles, AI and Google are seeing that, they're tracking that, and it's the same kind of content we've all been, Marcus and everybody else has been telling us for years, you need this kind of content on your website. It's the kind of content that's going to bring you the kind of clients you want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we need to start blogging. We need to get a website going. I mean, we got to follow these 3 R's, these 3 pillars.
Yeah.
And then after that, the reach piece, which is relationship and reach.
Yeah.
How does that part work?
So when somebody comes to your website, when they find your article, you want a way to capture their information. We call this a lead magnet. A lead magnet is basically it's either a digital download, it could be a quiz, it could be any kind of resource that your ideal client would find valuable and would be willing to exchange their name and their email to get. Very simple transaction. So it doesn't have to be something that costs you a lot. It just has to be enough information that the client is going to go, wow, that's something that would help me right now. Could be like a project planning pack. We just did a style guide for an architect who, she gets a lot of question about like, oh, I want to transform my house into XYZ or, so we created a style guide for her. For others, like for a corporate client, it might be maybe an assessment like, hey, we need to add, 10 people to our team over the next year. How is that going to affect our floor plan? And so, kind of almost like a test fit type of thing, right? Today with AI, anything's possible. But you want to be able to capture their information. Once you have their email, then you start sending them emails that reinforce your expertise and your experience and show them that you can solve the problems that they want to solve. So it's a very time-tested, simple process of just giving them something of value, getting their email, being able to deliver additional value to them without solving anything. You're not trying to solve all their problems. You're just trying to help reassure them that you're able to solve them. And so, the goal, we know with talking to a lot of our clients, architecture firm clients typically take anywhere from, it's possible. It could be a 2-week thing. But usually they're going and shopping architects 6, 12, 18 months before they ever start a project. Wow. So you don't want them to forget you when they finally make a decision to move forward and they have their financing in place and everything else. What you want to do is you want to stay top of mind, and email is the best way to do that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, does that need to be like just a repeat of the blog, or is that different content?
No, it typically will go in, would take that topic or would take, we'll either talk, we call it a drip sequence, right? So what we're doing is we're feeding the client information on a periodic basis. Not every day, not every week. Typically with most of our clients, we might have a sequence that is like maybe a 2 or 3 week sequence, like maybe 4 or 5 emails over 2 or 3 weeks. as an initial thing, but then we put them into the newsletter system. And usually that is either every other month or maybe every quarter, where we're sending out an email that is like, oh, hey, we just wrote this new blog. And so we're bringing them back to the website to get more value, and then maybe dropping a new value nugget as well in the email that they can't get on the website, right? Like, oh, and a lot of times it'll be like a case study where we're pointing out like, oh, hey, we had this great solution for this client, and this is how we solved that particular problem for them. Things like that. It's got to be relevant and timely for what's currently going on in the firm. But it's about reinforcing that, hey, we're here, we're ready to help you. All you got to do is give us a call or contact us, right?
Yeah. And of course, I'm thinking about myself as we're talking, because I'm an engineer, Bryon, and this is an AEC podcast. We have engineers, architects, contractors, and of course, people listening over the fence, but looking over the fence. But the point is, I mean, can engineers benefit from this?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it is a little bit different for engineers. I mean, you're not typically, most engineers aren't typically working directly with, some of the clients that architects might, but if you think about it, who are your clients, right? Like, who are your clients, Andy? Typically?
Well, our main one is architects, which is why,
right.
we're trying to provide value to them through the people like yourself. You're
Exactly.
providing value to our clients, really.
So you're doing this podcast and it's going out to architects and engineers and construction people, right?
Yeah.
So you're doing exactly what we're talking. You're providing value, right? People are seeing you as somebody who provides value, who's like bringing these guests on, like me and others, talk about these things that are helpful, right? So then, we just did this nice podcast here. What I would be doing after this, and if you send me a recording, I'll be happy to provide you an example. But I'm going to turn this discussion into more value. I'll use AI to help me. Hey, how can I utilize this in I have a new LinkedIn newsletter that I do every week that is targeting architects. I'll probably use some of the things that we discussed on this call for that. It'll probably generate maybe one or two different articles over the next few months. I might also take it and say, well, how can I turn this into a blog article or some social media posts as well? So, it's not that we want to create a bunch of new work that we can't keep up with. It's what we want to do is we want to be efficient with the work that we are doing. And so once we get to that reputation stage where we're producing those articles, then we're looking at like, well, how can we take that and repurpose it into other material like social media, like email, like lead magnets, and or new web pages on the website, and multiply the value of the value that we're providing, if that makes sense.
No, it does. It does make sense. But as I'm listening, I'm on behalf of our listener. I'm thinking, this all sounds great.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to get through the 3 R's. We're going to do blogs. We're going to go from 10% to 60%, and life is good. But can it really work? Is it really worth it? Mm-hmm. And how do I make time to do that? I mean, that's 3 questions for you, but it all
Sure.
kind of goes together. So can you help me get past that impediment a little bit?
Here's what I'll tell you is that, a lot of our clients that come to us and they say, there's always a hesitation like, oh, this is money I'm spending. I want to get a return on my investment. As I said, it's not an overnight thing. What we're doing is we're building systems and habits that have long-term returns. A blog article that is ranking well in search and in AI is going to have long-term value. Now you can go out and you can hire somebody to do some Google ads or some Facebook ads and probably get a lot of leads. They might not all be great leads. They might be a lot of tire kickers and people who just saw your thing and decided to click on it and thought, yeah, I had this dream, but I have no money and I don't know what to do. Listen, I've heard worse, and but it's realistic, right? Or you can have content that's actually going to have lifetime value. When you stop paying for those ads, they stop. They don't work anymore. When you create good content that is getting in search, typically has longevity. Number one, because there's not a lot of competition, and not a lot of your other architects and engineers are actually blogging in that way, right? So you're creating space in a landscape that is pretty empty already. So you become a sole player, right? You get to own a piece of real estate that other people aren't really even competing for. And it's free real estate still. I mean, I know blogging might seem like it's an old thing for a lot of people, but it's really not, because a lot of people aren't doing it. And if they are doing it, they're not doing it well. So the return, I think, comes in the consistency and developing the habits and doing them on a consistent basis. Finding time for it, that's certainly a concern. And that's where a company like us can help, because we fill a gap that, you may not fill otherwise, right? If you're a busy architect, you don't have a lot of time to write articles. You don't have a lot of time to, design social media posts or emails. So hiring somebody like us can help you to do those things. And we have developed, because we've worked with architects for a long time, we've developed the knowledge, we've developed the expertise, the systems to help us write content and develop content that is in the architect's voice. It sounds like them. It's presenting them in a good light, and it works. I forget the third question you asked, but I think I kind of
basically trying to get over the impediment. So I threw a triple header.
I think the impediment often comes with there's maybe a couple there, and one thing is just the newness of thinking this way, right? And what I often challenge people is, is what you're currently doing working? And if it's not, maybe it's worth trying something different.
Fair.
Fair. I just wrote an article on LinkedIn called the Explore, or it's called Explore versus Exploit. Yeah. And so there's this I don't know if it's a theory or a whatever it is, but so you can either explore new things or you can exploit things that you're doing well already, right? Or you can do a combination. So when you want to exploit is when things are working really well. So if you are getting a lot of referrals and a lot of repeat business and you don't have any trouble with cash flow and everything's working really well, no, you don't want to explore. You don't want to try something new, because that's going to throw a wrench in what you're doing well. And we don't want that. But if you're in a situation where you've been exploiting those referrals and repeats and so forth, and it's not getting you the result you want, that's when you want to start to explore. That's when you want to look at new things and say, well, what could we do differently? What could work better for us than what we're currently doing? And that's where a lot of architects come to us, is because they have tried to exploit their referrals and their repeats and everything else, and it hasn't been working. And so they come to us because they want to try something new. And, they've either heard good things about us, or, they found us online and looked at some of our case studies and the results that we get for clients, and decided that, hey, it is time to do something new.
They hit a pain point, and they wanted some Advil, so
exactly, and we are the Advil of architecture.
Now, yeah. I mean, it sounds like it, and I mean, also marketing is getting new work, but also, I mean, like, especially with social media. I mean, if you are able to be out there and have a presence, because recruiting. I mean, once you get work,
Oh
guess
yeah,
what?
recruiting.
You got to get the work done, right? And how are you going to bring new people in if you don't have a presence, right?
Yeah, and that's where I think the brochure websites actually really work against you because everybody I talk to who is trying to hire somebody that's a huge pain point. And when I look at their websites and I just see pretty pictures, and I'm looking at their social media and I just see pretty pictures, I'm not getting a sense of who am I working with here? What's it going to be like to be in this firm? One of our first clients, an architect down in Florida, that's exactly why he hired us. He was really struggling. He needed to grow. He needed new hires. And he didn't even have a website when he met us. He was like, he had hired this company and I don't know what the deal was, but they didn't deliver on what he needed. And so he's like in this limbo, and you would go to his website and it just said under construction. It was like, it was horrible. It was really bad. And so we helped him build a new website. And the whole purpose of that website was so that he could go to job fairs. And, he had a local design school near here, a couple design, I think it was FAU or one of those. And they would have a regular, design or job fair. And he could go to there and he could say, yeah, here's my business card. Here's my, go check out our website. And instead of just showing pretty pictures, we actually talked about what it was like to work there. We showed people working there. God forbid you do that on your architecture firm website. I see so many firm websites where you don't know other than the principal. You don't know if anybody else works there. And, I've heard every excuse in the book, like, well, we don't want people poaching our team. And, hey, if you're doing things right, you're not going to get poached. That's the real story there.
The cream rises to the top, right? That's
exactly. So, but if you're showing people what it's like to work for you and that it can be a fun place where you're going to learn a lot and you're going to have a great experience, you're not going to have a hard time getting people to get convinced that they should work with you. Yeah.
So that's another reason to improve your website and improve your brand.
Absolutely.
So, Bryon, just a couple more questions and then I can let you get to your day. But I wanted to think about, we've really talked about this archetype architect.
Archetypical architect, yeah.
Yeah, that is, the 2008 scenario, more of a seasoned architect situation. Yeah. Anyway, the point is maybe a younger architect that's just starting out, or maybe somebody who's just starting out.
Yeah.
So a fresh start type mentality instead of just a renovation of a company. Is there any different advice or any advice you would give to somebody like that?
So, yeah, I mean, I think when you're starting out, your priorities might be a little bit different than somebody who's a little bit more established and, is trying to figure out from how to get from where we're at to where we want to be. When you're starting out, one of the things that I talk to a lot about with architects who are just starting out is really try to grow your network as much as possible. Your network of partners. Make sure that you're telling everybody your family members, your friends, that you have a firm. Make sure that you're one thing you want to make sure that you do when you're starting out is get very clear about who is your ideal client, right? Because what's the number one thing people ask you when you go to a network event? Well, who do you want to meet? right? Who is it that you need to meet? Well, you got to be clear about that. If you're just like, oh, anybody who needs an architect, well, nobody needs an architect. We're talking about 1% of the population needs an architect, right? What we want to do is we want to get into the habit of telling people who we work with and how we help them, right? So, like just you go to a networking event and say, I'm an architect. It's like, you could just substitute financial advisor or lawyer or, accountant. Nobody cares, right? But if you say something like, well, I help growing families redesign or renovate their homes so their families can have more quality time together, or so they can entertain more, or whatever it might be. That's a completely different story than I'm an architect, right? And it helps people understand like who you're for and what you help them do. So
Yeah.
that's where I tend to try to get people to focus, is like, what present yourself in a way that's going to help people understand who you are, what you can do, and who it is you're going to help.
Awesome. That's good advice for new, seasoned, or anybody in business, really, it sounds like. So Bryon, this is the Enhanced Podcast. We really, like to find out your story as well, and your why. I mean, is there any other aspect of your why that you want to add today? And why do you do this, in other words?
Yeah, a lot of people ask me that, like, why, I mean, I have the ArchiGeek story, but what we really discovered when we started working with architects, so like I said, I studied graphic design, and I'm the kind of person that believes that design can really enhance how we live and how we interact together. It is something that surrounds us daily, and I think for me, one of the things that I feel very passionate about is that, when I started working with architects, I really saw that there was this struggle. A lot of architects are struggling because they don't know how to present themselves. They don't know how to present their value. And when you can't communicate your value, and the only differentiation is price, you're missing out on a lot of opportunities to really impact the world. And so our mission really is by 2030, we want to help 10,000 architects, because we believe that if we can help architects be better at business, they can better focus on design, and they can have a greater impact on the world. So
Yeah, that's an awesome vision that you have.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's great to have a vision. It's great to have a story, and you're living what you tell your clients, it sounds like.
I try. I'm trying to be true.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Bryon, it was awesome to have you on today. I want to make sure we give you an opportunity to share how to find you and your social presence. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. The best way to find out more about my company, ArcMark, is to go to our website. It's arcmark.co. So it's ArchMark.co. And the best place to connect with me on social media is on LinkedIn. If you just search for Bryon, and I spell my name a little bit different. It's Bryon, so Bryon with a yo. If you look for Bryon McCartney on LinkedIn, you should be able to find me pretty easily. If you want to connect with me, I'd love to connect with you, especially if you're an architect. Send me a connection request and just let me know that you heard me here on Enhance, and be happy to connect with you. And if there's any way we can help you, let us know.
Awesome. Thanks, Bryon. We'll definitely give you a shout out as well on the Enhance page. We do our LinkedIn as well. So we're one of those .co companies as well.
Yeah.
So,
I've been trying to buy arcmark.com for years. Some
Okay.
guy in China owns it, and he's like, the first time I contacted him, he's like, I want $14,000, and I was like, no, I don't think so. I'm not gonna give you 14,000. So anyway, we'll see. Maybe one of these days.
yeah, keep trying. All right,
Yeah.
Bryon, and I trust you got I trust that the arcmark.co is a solid website, because you're living your story there too.
I hope so. I mean, sometimes I feel like I'm the cobbler's kids, but we're so busy working on other people that we don't get to keep everything up to date. But you will find a lot of blog articles on our website that talk about a lot of these topics that we've covered, and many more. And like I said on LinkedIn, my newsletter, it's called Firm Forward. If you connect with me or go to my profile and scroll down a little bit, you'll see the Firm Forward newsletter. You can also subscribe to that on LinkedIn, and that I'm trying to provide as much value as I can to architects, help them understand these concepts and hopefully improve their businesses. So,
all right, awesome. Thanks, Bryon. Well, it's been a lot of fun talking to you today. I'm going to go check out some of those sites.
All right, Andy, I appreciate it, and hope you have a great rest of your day and week.
All right, thanks. God bless.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening to today's episode of Enhance, and please leave a like, a subscribe, or a follow, and we'll see you next time.